Good morning, Bears. Happy Friday. We have made it to the end of a week. Crazy, huh? I can't believe. All right, let me steady my camera here so you don't get a little dizzy trying to watch me. Well, listen, we are in for a treat today. I've been so super excited about turning Fridays, at least the past two, into a field trip day. Now, I don't think this class has been to the Field Museum with us before, but today we are going to take a virtual field trip. There we go. Getting my stuff ready to talk to you about a virtual field trip to the Field Museum, and we will be exploring just a little bit about dinosaurs. Of course, how could you go to the Field Museum without talking about dinosaurs? And we'll tidy it all up with talking about insects and seeing what the museum has in regards to insects. Now, our special guest for our virtual field trip is the mayor. How cool is that? She has put together this video for children all around Chicago. So we are very, very thankful that they did that and that we can be a part of this. So let me get my screen split here so we can go ahead and join this field trip. And we will not be watching the whole thing, so don't worry. I'll be stopping and fast forwarding and stuff. So do not think this is going to take all 30 minutes. So with that said, let's go to the Field Museum and see what there is. All right.
Mayor Lightfoot, welcome to the Field Museum.
It's my pleasure.
We're delighted to have you here.
I'm looking forward to this.
You are here in Stanley Field Hall, the former home of Sue, now the home of Maximo, the largest animal that's ever been discovered to have walked on Earth. Weighs roughly the same as a 737.
Wow.
It's an amazing specimen.
It's beautiful.
We've got 150, 170 scientists at work here when we're open. 40 million specimens and objects. It's one of the greatest records of the history of life on Earth, right here in Chicago.
The pleasure of being able to really just take in not only the beauty of the exhibits, but also the beauty and majesty of the building is quite a treat.
Good.
And I'm marveling at these overhead. I think they look like kind of colonies and sculptures.
These are pretty rudimentary plants that are through many, many, many stages of evolution directly related to the kind of thing that this animal must have eaten in large quantities in a day.
So can you tell us a little bit?
All right, so there is the introduction to the Field Museum with Maximo the Titanosaur. He's huge, and if you haven't been there before, I sure hope you can go sometime when all this crazy staying at home is over. So let's fast forward over to learning about more dinosaurs and the most famous one there, Sue the T-Rex. All right, here we go. Moving right ahead, and yes, here we go. The dinosaurs, my personal
Mayor Lightfoot,
favorite.
welcome to the Dinosaur Hall.
It's my pleasure. I mean, it's just fascinating.
One of our largest real fossils is this. This is the animal that used to be called Brontosaurus, but Field Museum's first curator of paleontology synonymized Brontosaurus under the name Apatosaurus. So since 1903, the proper name for this guy is Apatosaurus, but it's a big sauropod. These are the biggest of the dinosaurs.
So what did it eat?
This is a plant eater, and depending on whether it was warm-blooded or cold-blooded, it was a real challenge to get enough food through that relatively tiny head. This is one of the main plant-eating groups from the Jurassic of North America.
So it must have literally been eating nonstop every day.
That's clearly the idea. Wish we could see one now to prove that.
And how big do they get? Is this kind of typical what we theorize as the size?
Yeah, this is a pretty good size. From some of the bones, though, for example, you can see the shoulder blade, which is two bones. It's still in two bones, so they haven't fused together, which is what happens in the older adults. But this animal is about 75 feet long, would have weighed something like 40 tons in life. They were big animals.
I'm noticing here there's a display on plants. And I'm a gardener, so tell me a little bit about why the plants are here among all these dinosaurs.
Well, you know, we try and put the animals in their environment, which includes plants, of course. back in the Mesozoic, cycads would have been very common. Plants like ginkgos would have been very common. Those were the lower things. And then the towering conifers. There were not early in the Mesozoic, no flowering plants yet. That comes along in the Cretaceous.
So I've always loved ginkgo trees, and I finally got one
beautiful
planted in my front yard. So I'm waiting for it to come back yet this spring.
There are ginkgos between the museum and Soldier Field, and it's always fun to see that distinctive leaf, isn't it?
Yes, very much so. So should we move on?
Yeah, let's take a little stroll down here. Mayor, this is a tyrannosaur. It's not T-Rex. It's an earlier, smaller animal called Daspletosaurus. It's from Alberta, Canada, and was collected in the 1920s. And it is looming over its victim, which is a duck-billed dinosaur. And this duck-bill, which is called Lambeosaurus, is, along with Sue, one of our most complete dinosaurs. Almost everything you see here is not only real, but it was found in this position, which is really unusual. So scavengers didn't get to it. It was buried very quickly. So this is, I think, a really great dynamic display, predator-prey.
So this is essentially a smaller version of the T-Rex. You see the large head with the big teeth.
Absolutely.
And then you see the shorter arms.
Absolutely. The little two-fingered arms that we still haven't figured out a purpose for. Yeah, it's like, any family. For example, the cat family. We've got little house cats and Siberian tigers.
Yeah.
So.
All right. So tell me about this guy.
Yeah, so this is one of the end members of the horned dinosaur family. We've got one of the earliest ones here, Protoceratops. That's from the Gobi Desert of Mongolia. But at the very end, this is what Sue had to fight off and prey upon. Triceratops is one of the last dinosaurs, along with T-Rex, to be alive until the asteroid hits, and we've got that big extinction at 66 million years ago.
Did meat-eating dinosaurs exist at the same time as plant-eating dinosaurs?
Yes, often in an evolutionary lineage, you'll see meat eaters first, and then the plant eaters will evolve soon after. But yes, through most of the history of dinosaurs, there have been both types.
Wow, interesting.
And this was one of the largest plant-eating dinosaurs that T-Rex had to deal with. The other big one was a big duck-billed dinosaur called Edmontosaurus, and we'll see skulls of both of those in the Sioux Hall.
Okay.
Shall we?
Yes, absolutely.
Mayor Lightfoot, we're now in the Sioux Hall. When we first put Sioux together and unveiled it in 2000, it was in the big main hall, but we couldn't really put it in context there. It was just another pretty face. We wanted to build an exhibit hall around it, and that's what this is all about. So we took the whole skeleton apart. It's made to be taken apart so it can be studied, and moved it up here. We made some improvements because we know more about T-Rex than we did before. Probably the biggest change in the mount is these structures in the belly that look sort of like ribs. They're sometimes referred to as belly ribs. The technical term is gastralia. We always had those, but we weren't exactly sure how they went together on this animal. So we were able to put the gastralia on it. And now Sue has this big belly. It looks a lot more massive than it did in Stanley Field Hall.
So you obviously learned a lot about the T-Rex over time.
Absolutely. Over those 20 years, we know a lot more about this animal than we did when we mounted it the first time.
So can you give us a few of the insights that paleontologists have learned since Sue was discovered and then was first put on display 20 years ago?
So it gave us the opportunity to sample a few bones that we hadn't been able to before. Dinosaurs, like trees, stop growing for a season during every year. And so, like trees, they leave rings. We call them lines of arrested growth, not tree rings, obviously. You just count those rings and you get an idea of how old the animal was. We now think Sue is closer to 33 years old when it died rather than 28. So that's some of the new science that's come about since we took Sue down and moved it up here.
It's fascinating. So this is not the actual head that was found?
No, the actual head never gets on the end of the neck because it's the most studied part of the skeleton, and it's just too hard to study 13 feet up in the air. So that's a plastic cast. You saw that the skull was a bit distorted. Any bone that big, when it gets buried and then the sediment compacted into rock, gets distorted. So what we did was we basically molded the skull and then made casts and took the casts apart, cut it apart and put it back together, removing as much of the distortion as we could. And so we think that's what Sue's skull would have looked like when it was not crushed as it is now.
So one of the things that I think people forget is that the Field Museum is a working laboratory. Scientists and paleontologists come here to study the various specimen and exhibits. Is that right?
There's a cutting-edge research institution behind the scenes here. And in fact, my collection, the vertebrate paleontology collection, is pretty representative of all the collections throughout the building. Less than 0.5% of my collection is on display. There is a huge collection and research being done all the time on that collection. We're going out into the field multiple times every year to learn new things, discover new animals in this case. We are a big research institution as well as an exhibit museum.
And that's true of the original Sioux head. It's built in a display that can pull out so that scientists can actually get a closer look at the actual head itself.
Yeah, our exhibits folks are so good. They understand that these fossils, while they're on display, are still part of the research collection, and researchers need access.
Do we know anything about the other dinosaurs that were like this? What can you tell us about how they were arranged? Were they families, tribes? What's the word for it?
So like any organism, they're arranged in a hierarchical taxonomy classification. T-Rex, Tyrannosaurus rex, belongs to the family that's named for it, the Tyrannosauridae. And there are many other tyrannosaurs besides T-Rex. T-Rex just happens to be the last one and the biggest one. They're a family that started in Asia and then migrated to North America and attained gigantic size. This is from a group of dinosaurs called Coelurosaurs, which means hollow bone. Oh. And most of them are about this big or even smaller. Every bird that's ever lived is a Coelurosaur, but there was one group that got gigantic, and that's the Tyrannosaurs.
You said that they started in Asia and then they came to North America. The world looked different than it does now, obviously.
It did, although by the time T-Rex was alive, you'd recognize it. It wasn't so different, but the farther back in time you go, yes, the continents move, and at one point they were all in one landmass called Pangaea. But
okay, we're gonna stop right there because even some of that is just gonna go right over my head. Basically, all of that is to say, if you can see through my videos here, that they're saying that the land of our earth used to just be one big piece together, and over time it split apart to what we see it as now, with the different continents across the ocean and whatnot. So we are going to fast forward. That is enough with the dinosaurs for now. We're going to fast forward to see what the Field Museum has to share with us about the insects that they have. So here we go. Let's fast forward into time, if you will. Still going, and here we go. Play.
Welcome to Field Museum's insect collection.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
I'm Petra Sierwald. I'm a curator here.
How'd you get interested in insects?
Because there are so many species. It's unbelievable. 400,000 described beetle species. Oh. Yeah, that is an enormous, and they live in every ecosystem on this planet. Our collection is global in scope, but with major focus on the Americas. Okay. Most of our insect collections are pinned. We have specimens from the end of 18th century, and a large number of our specimens are also preserved in ethanol, like this tarantula, for example. So this is just a tarantula in ethanol.
Wow, that is an enormous creature.
Yeah. Let's move over.
Okay, quick side note. We've studied this. Are spiders technically insects? No, they're not. But as we know, they do get grouped into insects a lot. So just wanted to clarify that with you guys.
The collection and see Robin.
Hi, Robin. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. I'm a collection digitization specialist here at the museum.
So that's very fancy words. Tell me what that means.
Yes. So it is my job to attach QR codes. They're unique, so it represents a catalog number on every single specimen. And then I transcribe all the collecting data from every single label that's attached to a specimen, and I enter that into a database. Then that information is made available worldwide to researchers all over them.
So I see the pins, right? But what happened to the specimens themselves?
You might not be able to see that, but this whole drawer contains what are called burrowing water beetles.
Oh, so these little tiny, those are the specimens.
That's the specimen. Wow. Yes.
Wow.
So we've got some larger specimens. Here we have
I'd
a
say
drawer.
quite a bit larger.
Yes. So these are earth burrowing dung beetles.
Wow.
So they're related to scarabs.
Okay.
You can tell they look like, big guys that roll up the balls. Here we have what are called stag beetles, and they're aptly named because their mandibles appear or resemble deer antlers. And those are the males. We actually have a drawer of some much larger stags.
Oh.
They have quite impressive.
Yeah, those look like they can do some damage.
They do. I mean, they use that to fight over females and mating territory, etc.
But they don't use those to eat or.
No, they actually have physical mandibles that they use for, chewing and eating food. And the reason why
Okay. Did you see how big those beetles were? They were almost the size of a grown person's hand. So fascinating. All right, so we're going to move ahead just a little bit more because they're going to do a lot of talking about classification and how they actually name some of all of the animals there. It's really fascinating, but a little too much for us at this moment. But I'm going to move us right ahead. Check this out. Da-da. Yes, now you'll get to see some different insects.
Appreciate it.
Great meeting you.
Good to meet you.
We have here put together interesting and larger specimens from a diversity of insects. So basically to show there is more to insects than beetles. And starting out at that corner here are actually my research animals, arachnids and myriapods.
So kids, we're talking about spiders and millipedes and centipedes. These are really fascinating and quite big.
Yes, they are big. That is true. Well, there are relatively big centipedes, for example, Scolopendra in Florida. I mean, they can be like this. And centipedes are the ones that bite, and millipedes are the ones that basically munch down the leaf litter in a deciduous forest. So they are kind of in waste management and very good at it. And they have done that for the last 450 million years. So
tell
Fascinating. All right, so we're going to move ahead for one last time, and we're going to see the insect that we know is called the walking stick. Have you heard of that before, the walking stick? I wonder why this insect is called the walking stick. Any thoughts? Can you picture in your mind what a bug called a walking stick might look like? Well, you don't have to think too hard. Let's move ahead, like I said, one last time and look at the walking sticks. Dun, dun, dun. Yes, here we are.
What I call the walking sticks.
Yes,
These are
they are walking
beautiful.
sticks. Yes, walking sticks really beautifully camouflage to look like basically twigs, part of trees. And it's not only their body features, also their behavior is adapted. So they will not, for example, make sudden movements, but swing kind of the same way as a twig.
Yeah.
And these spines and tubercles basically disrupt the body image. So if it sits on a lichen-covered tree trunk,
You couldn't tell.
You can't. Yeah,
Wow.
It's really hard to tell. Others then have shock colors, like these katydids with red wings, so suddenly opening them when they fly away, and it has basically a shock effect on a would-be predator. That's how some of the butterflies and moths also operate with these colorations are thought, or these patterns here on these moths. These are moths and butterflies from Illinois, are thought to basically look like eyes. And when they open them, a would-be predator, like a bird, is suddenly startled and will not necessarily pick at it.
Well, you can see on some of these moths, there's 4 eyes, 2 sets. Yeah. I find all of them fascinating. I like the different colors. I like the different ways in which they adapt their bodies to their environment to ward off predators. So to me, it's all very interesting. The beetles I could probably do a little bit without, but sorry, Petra. Tell me, how long have you worked here at the museum?
Since 1996.
Wow, long time.
Yeah, a long time.
Thank you for sharing your life's work with us.
Thank you very much for coming.
It's a pleasure.
It's nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you as well. I very much enjoyed my time with you here today. We saw women warriors, we saw dinosaurs, and one of my favorite areas is insects. And I know we just started to scratch the surface, but hopefully that spurs a lot of curiosity, and the people that were watching, I know it has with me, to come back and learn more at the Field Museum.
Well, it's been a great pleasure to be able to show you some very small portion of the treasures of this great museum. And we do hope that you come back as well.
I definitely will.
Great. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
And there you have it, a virtual field trip to the Field Museum. How fortunate are we to live so close to such fascinating bits of information, from the Field Museum to the aquarium to the Museum of Science and Industry. Wow, Bears, we are very, very fortunate. And even though we're kind of stuck at home for just a little while, you know what? That is okay. So that is it for our big idea for today. Let me talk to my daughter for a second. Girls, you need to leave the room. Mommy moment here. I'm in the middle of videoing. Shut the door by turning the handle. We have a busted door. Parenthood at its finest. So anyways, hey guys, it's Friday. Tomorrow's Saturday and Sunday. It's the weekend. Boy, I'm gonna miss you. I'm gonna miss talking with you like this through our Zoom meetings, but just know that you are on my heart and in my mind. So with that said, let's wish each other well, put our hands on our heart, think about all our friends at school. Maybe imagine sitting next to them, giving them a hug, chatting it up at the breakfast or lunch table. All right, here we go. We wish you well, we wish you well. All through the day, we wish you well. All right, bye Bears. We will see you on Monday.